Hello, Ilya.
Hello, Cecile. Do you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. So it's great to hear you, and welcome to Quantum Photonics.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So we also would like to welcome Darcel, one of our moderators here in Quantum Photonics. Hello, Darcel.
Hello, Cecile. Good morning and happy Friday. And happy Friday to you as well, Doctor.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, thank you, Darcel. So will Bob be joining us this time, or he cannot join?
He cannot join. I'll sit in until a regular moderator arrives.
I see. So we will be waiting for more people to come in. So we will be requesting Darcel to please play some music for us. Darcel Ilya is from the entertainment industry. He is a writer, a musician, a director, and a filmmaker, and we are always glad to hear his composition here in Quantum Photonics to open our events. Um,
Nice to meet you too.
Darcel, I'd like to give the mic to you.
All right, thank you. So, without further ado, let's get started. Here we go. Okay, Cecile, the mic is yours. Thank you.
Welcome to Quantum Photonics. We are here again for a very exciting episode with our special guest who is with us on stage. And please Take note of the links that we had posted at the top of the screen. These are the slides that Dr. Stumbler shared with us to guide us for his talk. And I will also be posting um, some link here on the room chat for the book that he had. So yeah, I would like to start introducing our guest. Dr. Ilyas Tumbler, PhD, is the Chief Science Officer and Chairman of VETEC Seniority Association, the Movement for Longevity and Quality of Life in Israel. He is a fellow at the Department of Science, Technology, and Society, Bar Ilan University, Israel, where he has received his PhD. His research has focused on the historical and social implications of aging and longevity research. He has also been involved in mathematical modeling of aging and aging related diseases. He is the author of the books A History of Life, Extensionism in the 20th Century, and Longevity Promotion, Multidisciplinary Perspectives. He is actively involved in advocacy for aging and longevity research, serving as an executive committee member of the International Society on Aging and Disease and International Longevity Alliance. Fellow at the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies, IEET, Fellow and Policy Director at the Global Health Span Policy Institute, and he has published over 60 academic papers, journal articles, and book chapters, including In Progress in Neurobiology, Aging and Disease, Cancer Detection and Prevention, Rejuvenation Research, Current Aging Science, Global Aging, Mechanisms of Aging and Development, Frontiers in Genetics, Geroscience, The Lancet, Healthy Longevity, Encyclopedia of Gerontology and Population Aging, Encyclopedia of Biomedical Gerontology, and other scientific journals and books. So yeah, without further ado, I would like to give the mic to Ilya and would like to welcome him here in Quantum Photonics. Ilya, welcome.
Thank you, Cecile. Nice to be here. Thanks to the listeners. So I'll just go over my presentation briefly. You can see it all in the link. I think I should say when I switch slides, if you want, or I can just go, straight forward. As I was introduced by Cecile, I am, involved in longevity research in various multidisciplinary aspects of it, not just science, but also social implications, historical implications. And I'm also involved in advocacy for aging research. When we speak about advocacy for aging research, I think we should understand, the main structure of our discourse is that first we need to understand the feasibility of extending health longevity. Is it possible or not? Then we need to understand the desirability, if it is possible to promote, to improve health longevity. Do we want it actually? And then if we decide that it is possible and that we want it, then what should we do to promote it? And that's approximately how my book is structured. The topic of this discussion is based on my book called Longevity Promotion, Multidisciplinary Perspectives. I have another book called The History of Life Extensionism, but here we will focus on the second one, the smaller one, Longevity Promotion. It also has a section about history, but also about longevity science and longevity advocacy and policy, as well as longevity philosophy, including some religious views. So that basically fits the framework I discussed. The longevity science section and the longevity history, the history of longevity science section, cover the part of feasibility. What did people think about the possibility to extend health longevity, to intervene into aging? The section about philosophy covers the desirability section. What is our philosophy about life extension? Do we want it? do we need it? And then the first section is about the longevity policy or longevity advocacy, and that's the action that we can do to promote healthy longevity if it is possible and if we want it, not just as scientists but also as public activists. So that's the basic structure of my book and my work. When we talk about health longevity, the first thing we need to know is that in order to extend health longevity, we would want to intervene into the process that shortens our lives the most and brings most disease. That is the aging process itself. So that's the main idea of longevity promotion, that in order to extend health longevity, we should intervene into aging. In this way, we'll be able to prevent multiple age-related diseases. We have promoted this idea a lot. I've been involved in this research and advocacy for 20 years. In 2002, we published our first website about life extension, and I've been involved in it pretty intensely for 20 years. But in the last 2 years, we focused more on the relation between COVID and aging, because we understand that aging is the main risk or even the main contributing factor for COVID-related deaths and severe cases. So that basically means that if we want to fight this pandemic as well, this crisis as well, we also want to improve the underlying health of all the people. And we have advocated a lot for this point during the past 2.5 years. So far, so far it looks like our progress is not so great in terms of extending longevity and health longevity. It was good for about 70 years. For about 70 years, the general life expectancy increased. For the last 2 years, it actually decreased. For the first time in 70 years around the world, we had almost 2 years decrease in life expectancy globally. In some places more, in some places less, but that's on the average. So for us, as longevity researchers and advocates, that gives just more motivation to intensify our efforts to do more, to at least go back to the levels we had before the crisis. And it is feasible. It is feasible to intervene into aging, to extend healthy longevity. There are several lines of evidence that indicate that it is possible. First of all, we see that the life expectancy is plastic. It's pliable. Yes, now we have a decline in life expectancy, but for over 100 years we had an increase. And that shows that life expectancy can be influenced for better and for worse, and we hope it can be influenced for better still. Our technologies are improving, whatever we say or do. Our medical technologies are accelerating and becoming more widespread. Also, from the basic theoretical level, we see that there is no law in nature that prevents intervention into aging and extension of lifespan. There are organisms in nature that do not age, that actually the lifespan is not limited. Also, we have a lot of proofs of feasibility from experimental life extension, not just the extension of lifespan, but also prevention of age-related diseases by intervention into aging. And also, even in basic evolutionary terms, we actually evolved toward greater longevity, have evolved toward longevity for the past 100,000 years. Hopefully, if there is no catastrophe, we can continue to evolve toward longevity. But once again, there is no law in nature that says that we will increase our longevity, but there is also no strict limit to it. Another source of optimism is in history. I don't know, that's my dissertation was about history of life extensionism. I wrote a book about it. You can, by the way, download it even for free. If you want to buy a hard copy, you're welcome, but you can even download it for free from my website, longevityhistory.com. Pretty thorough history of the research of aging and longevity. With examples from Europe, from the United States, from the former Soviet Union. And we see that in this history, actual therapies were developed based on aging research. And also we see that this research is very young. We understand that people were looking for longevity, for life extension for thousands of years, but the actual scientific pursuit of it is very young, starting from about 120 years from researchers like Elie Mechnikov, Charles Edouard Brown-Séquard, who proposed the first scientifically based theories of aging and interventions for health and longevity. And now we see that the proofs of feasibility are really multiplying. We have several classification systems of aging processes, for example, strategies for engineered negligible senescence of Aubrey de Grey. We have the hallmarks of aging of Lopez Otin. We have the pillars of aging of the NIH Neuroscience Interest Group. It is a group of scientists that combines representatives from many institutes of the NIH who are interested in this approach of intervention to aging to prevent diseases and extend health and longevity. And in each class of processes, we have proofs of feasibility to intervene into those processes and actually prevent age-related diseases. Most of those proofs of feasibility exist at the basic laboratory level, but there are already some emerging clinical trials. So our goal is to move the needle more from the basic studies. Still, we have a lot to understand at the basic level, but also we hope to accelerate the progress toward the clinic. And in doing so, it is also very important to measure the aging processes to understand exactly what we are treating, to understand the success of our treatments, as well as their safety, their efficacy. So we're here in the quantum photonic group, so we should all understand the importance of measurement, and of course, at least in quantum field, where when you measure something, you influence it. But at least we are not discussing this level. Here we need to understand, the basic measurement, the basic metrics that we're influencing. So that will be a subject of future research. The main idea remains that by intervention into aging, we'll be able to prevent multiple age-related diseases. That's the main idea of geroscience or of longevity medicine. And I'm happy to say, not many people know that actually starting from this year, aging is already recognized as a medical condition. Because what does it mean to intervene into aging? It means that aging needs to be recognized as something that we can intervene into. It needs to be recognized as a medical condition. So right now, aging is recognized as a medical condition in the International Classification of Diseases, the ICD-11 system, not as a disease per se, but as two types of category, as an etiology or causality category, and as a system of symptoms or syndrome. So in both those basic categories, we can intervene into aging. Still, nobody yet used those categories, but they are there, and it will be the basis for future research and development. So the next step will be to actually develop evaluation criteria for intervention to aging, for extension of healthy lifespan, and that will be the subject of much future work. We contribute our part. Here are some of the papers we publish on this topic, but that's just a small contribution. Many people will contribute more. So we need to analyze a lot of data to be able to actually measure aging and to measure interventions into aging. My colleagues and I, we have been focusing on information theoretical measurements of aging and age-related diseases. My colleague is David Bloch. So perhaps also in this group, this approach may be interesting. But once again, this is just a drop of water in the ocean. Many other approaches should exist and synergize with each other. But at least we contribute our part. And another important way toward progress is toward intervention to aging is actually to try to intervene. We can sit in our rooms and discuss it on Clubhouse for many years and decades, but unless we actually try to intervene into aging in experiments, in human experiments, will not progress far. So that's also the area that we want to promote. For example, I'm happy that about 2.5 years ago, at the start of the pandemic, a group of Chinese scientists led by Dr. Robert Chinhua Zhao proposed to use mesenchymal stem cells as a therapy against COVID, and I was happy to be a part of this study, to participate in it. How is this related to aging? We know that mesenchymal stem cells is a promising candidate for therapy against immunosenescence, against some aging phenomena of the immune system. So the idea is that perhaps this means can also improve the outcomes on COVID. So there were actually some improvement in outcomes. Of course, this will require further research. And another thing that we need to understand, longevity is that longevity promotion is not just about science, it is also about the public perception of science. We can have all the scientific directions we want, we can even have the actual treatments and therapies, but unless the public wants it, unless the public is ready to use them, we will not be able to actually treat anyone. People will say aging is natural. We don't want this entire field, and there's no funding and no development. So alongside science, we also need to discuss social implications, ethical implications of this research at the fundamental ethical level. Do we even want to intervene into aging? Doesn't it violate some law of nature or divine law? And if we think that we should intervene, then there arise all kinds of other ethical questions. How should we conduct this research ethically? Who will benefit from this research? How will the results be ethically distributed? So all this will be as a subject of much discussion. And at least now we can do some of this discussion. As I said, from the basic ethical level, we need to decide: do we even want to intervene into aging? Do we even want to extend health longevity? Some people argue that we don't, but the life extension is the people who do want health longevity. They argue that actually the extension of life is a direct derivative of our basic survival instinct, our basic valuation of life. If we value life, we also want to extend it, hopefully in good health. But the main value is the actual human life, and this is the idea that was shared by many philosophers. Maimonides in Jewish tradition, I'm from Israel, and also Herbert Spencer and the founder of gerontology, Eli Mechnikov, that I mentioned earlier, all agreed that actually extending health longevity should be a common goal of humanity. And even if we don't just think about our own survival or survival of our close ones, we should also think about longevity as a means toward communal survival. Life extension is an egotism that you want to only you only care about yourself, you want to extend your precious life. And why is it so precious? No, actually, we not only want to extend our own life, but also we believe that extending longevity will also improve general survival of our society, of our even of our species. And that's not my idea. That was the idea that was expressed by such philosophers as Bernard Shaw, who believed that if you want our race to survive, we should actually grow out of our harmful habits. And this idea was repeated by others, for example, by J.B.S. Haldane, who said that rational animals of human type should actually live longer to be able to handle even nuclear energy more responsibly. This is especially relevant right now. Right now, we're having a bit of a nuclear scare all around the world. But if we strove toward longevity, if we thought for the long term, perhaps it would be more more responsible, less willing to take a risk as a species. And the idea of life extension of longevity is shared not just by non-religious philosophers, also by religious philosophers. That's actually an idea that can unify pretty much everybody. You can find examples of life extensionism in every religious tradition, as well as in theistic thinking. So that's one thing that can unify us. Still, many people argue that we should not extend life. It will bring overpopulation and stagnation and boredom and loss of meaning. All those arguments are pretty standard, and they can also be countered in a standard way. Actually, I wrote a few articles, even one frequently asked questions. You can just go point by point, and there are answers to every objection. As life extensions, people who would like to extend life, especially healthy life, we argue that extended longevity will bring stability, that the potential for learning will be increased, that suffering will be preventable, that life has a meaning of its own. So by all those arguments, we actually do want to extend longevity. Also, often people raise the objection of overpopulation, that extending longevity is supposed to bring overpopulation, lack of resources. Actually, it has never been observed in practice. Usually, extending longevity is accompanied by increasing resources as well as declining birth rates. So at least we should not worry about that too much. But we should worry about increasing age-related diseases. As life expectancy is increasing, also the age-related diseases are increasing, and that's our main point of advocacy. That we should really invest into aging research to find effective means to intervene into aging, to prevent age-related disease, and in this way also help save resources for the economy, for the welfare system, for the healthcare system. So that's our main point of advocacy. And as I mentioned from the outset, we have to look at the problem of longevity in three ways. First, if it is possible, we see that it is possible, at least in some way. Second, if it is desirable, I think we can agree that at least some extension of health longevity is desirable. And if we do believe that it is possible and it is desirable, then we should take some action to achieve it. And how do we do this? As in any social movement, we get together, we advocate, we educate, we promote certain research, certain lifestyle, and this is the same way that we should promote longevity. And I've been involved quite a lot in various organizations that promote longevity research, development, and education. You can promote it at every level, from the international level to the government level to the individual level. You don't have to wait for the government to take this agenda. You can actually band together with like-minded people. You can research the subject, not even as a professional. Even more public interest will increase support, will increase the professional involvement. So also lay interest is very valuable for this promotion. You can study adjacent fields. If you are in the quantum research field, you can think how your research can relate to longevity, to aging. I don't even go into there. It's a little above my head, but as people interested in this, you can as I said, join others formally or informally online in talks like this, in discussions, formally in associations like our association. For example, I have a few associations that are listed in the presentation. Here in Israel, we have the Vetek Association, which is translated as Seniority, the Movement for Longevity and Quality of Life. I'm also active in other organizations like International Longevity Alliance, Global Health Span Policy Institute, International Society on Aging and Disease. And through those organizations, we strive to support the field professionally, but also in terms of lay outreach, in terms of promoting policies and advocacy. Actually, we've been quite active in advocacy, especially here in Israel. Through our advocacy, we're able to introduce the topic of healthy longevity research, development, and education into the Israel National Master Plan on Aging. It was quite an achievement for us a couple of years ago. So we hope to continue this advocacy because once again, this is a problem for everybody. Everybody should be involved in some way. Learn at least something about this topic because actually we want to live longer and healthier ourselves and all our loved ones. And we should do something together, at least to have some minimal interest in this topic. So I think I did some introduction, half an hour, to the things we do, to the things we cover in my book and also in my work generally. I can go for 2 hours more, but I think as a general introduction, it's good. So I'm happy if there are any questions, any suggestions, any points anybody wants to raise.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ilya. Yeah, so please check out the book of Ilya. I had placed the link on the room chat, and so we would like to open the floor to the audience to ask questions. Please feel free to come up to raise your hand. We will bring you up the stage. So, yeah, initially I would like to ask you, Ilya. So, Aubrey de Grey has been here, and yeah, our colleagues like Liz Parrish and other aging researchers who are actually going into science, and yeah, we would like to welcome you, who is doing this international advocacy. And you had mentioned a while ago that during this pandemic, you had pushed more for the advocacy about longevity. Could you tell us a little more about it?
Yes, yes. I would like to think of myself as also actually doing some science. Not a lot of it. I have over 60 academic publications, especially on measurements of aging using some information theory approaches. I'm not a mathematician, but I mainly contributed to the biological interpretations together with my colleague David Bloch. Yes, I'm very interested. That's my probably my main, hopefully my main contribution to the longevity field is yes, I'm very strongly involved in advocacy, but of course also my other scientist colleagues also involved in advocacy. I'm more involved at the formal association levels, especially non-profit associations, organization and policy papers, things like that. Yes, after we published this paper about the use of mesenchymal stem cells against COVID, with one of the rationales being that actually it is supposed to reduce the chances for cytokine storm for severe outcome because it could reduce some immunosenescence, improve the aging response. So after that, it was probably the first time that a scientific paper proposed that by intervention into aging, we will be able to also mitigate the effects of COVID. Once again, for the same reason that aging is the main risk for COVID, for mortality in COVID patients. We see that the majority of deaths are in older patients. And that was globally understood that we should just lock those people up, and that's our care. No, we should have gone one step forward and understand that if the aged people are the most vulnerable, we should do something to improve the underlying health of all the people, their aging processes. So that's what we advocated through research papers like this one, also some reviews that we did with one of the founders of the theory of immunosenescence, Professor Colagero Caruso, and also Professor Alexey Moskalov. The paper is called Innate and Adaptive Immunity, the Foundation of Resilience. And we also argued that if we improve the aging immune system, we will be able to fight COVID as well. And also there were some other papers, for example, a position paper that we published together with some of the leading geroscientists, especially from the United States, like Nir Barzilai and Philip Sierra and Matt Kaberlein and a few others. We published this position paper where we argued this same thing, that if we really want to prevent this pandemic, really, improve aging health, we need to intervene into aging processes, and the same means will be probably adequate, will be probably relevant also for future pandemics and future health crises that will also likely affect all the people, because once again, aging is the main risk for all those diseases. Earlier, before the pandemic, we focused on non-infectious diseases like heart disease and diabetes and neurodegenerative diseases. We said that for all those diseases, actually aging is the main underlying cause or risk factor. So we should, if we're really serious about preventing these diseases, we should focus on aging. And now with the pandemic, we had this addition that not just for non-communicable disease, also for communicable, for infectious diseases, also we have to improve aging processes to fight them. So that was the main point of our advocacy, at least in 2020. When this started, we published not just scientific papers, position papers, review papers, but also organized conferences. Of course, then we could only have online conferences, like the conference on COVID, aging, and immunity we had in 2020, and we published some public appeals in mainstream media, for example, in Jerusalem Post, but and others also published in other mainstream media. So we really did our best to reach out to explain that if we really look at the root of the problem, we should address aging. I must say, after more than 2 years of this advocacy, it hasn't caught widely. This idea wasn't widely accepted for various reasons. The people still look at the virus as a standalone entity, unrelated to age-related risk factors. If we're dealing with the virus, we're dealing with the virus, not with any underlying risk factors or causes. But we will continue this advocacy. We will continue to explain to people that actually we do have to look at the aging as the main risk, not just for this particular disease, but for virtually all diseases. And if we really want to extend longevity again, and not just lose 2 years of life expectancy like we did during the pandemic, we should actually look at the underlying health of all the people, and intervene into aging processes. We have all the feasibility proofs for that. We just need to do more experimentation, more thinking, more funding. Basically, that was the outcome of our 2 years of advocacy for the connection between aging and COVID. But now we see that even the interest in COVID is subsiding, and hopefully the actual epidemic is subsiding. So we go back to to our early arguments about aging being the main cause or the main risk of virtually all other diseases, especially chronic non-communicable diseases like cancer and heart disease and diabetes and neurodegenerative diseases. So I think COVID may come and go, but aging is not going anywhere. For at least the next foreseeable future, we will have aging to deal with, and our advocacy will still be relevant. Initially, we thought that people would immediately realize this connection between aging and COVID, and invest more in aging research. It didn't happen. There was some increase in investment, but not the one we hoped for. The immediate, awakening that yes, aging is the thing. No, it didn't happen. But now actually, people are more inclined to go back and consider aging as a risk when there is less involvement with COVID. So we are hopeful that this advocacy will continue and will bring some fruit in terms of more research projects, more funding.
Yeah, thank you, Ilya. Just one more question, and I will pass the mic to Salil if, if you want to speak. So, um, I would just like to ask you: you have been in the field for quite some time, not only in research but also in advocacy. So, what do you think has this journey been from the time that you had started to be active in the field? What is the situation now regarding the research of this? Because, of course, we had seen the advent of funding actually in many labs, especially like the ones that Jeff Bezos has, and also Yuri Milner, the Altus Labs, and many others. And there's a proliferation also about the life extension research in the Boston area. So, I think in the past years, even just before COVID, but more funding is given to it. And of course, we see some advancement in the research that is being done. How do you see this journey? Where are we now? And what is your forecast? What is your vision, about it in the next few years?
Great question. Thank you, Cecile. So here we have to distinguish between progress in terms of advocacy and progress in terms of research. In terms of advocacy, there's no comparison. I started this advocacy 20 years ago. Nobody even dared to speak the things that I'm daring to speak now. Intervention to aging, life extension. God forbid. They would sort of throw you out of of all the stairs. Even when I started my PhD, nobody wanted to recognize. Even the topic, even as historical topic, people were interested in research of aging for hundreds of years, but they didn't even want to recognize that it was a legitimate topic, research of aging and intervention to aging. But now we see it's everywhere. It's all over the media. There are huge foundations. For example, recently we heard about the foundation in Saudi Arabia. They promised about $1 billion a year. For now, they give 10 millions, but there is huge potential there, and the commercial funds for longevity therapies are popping up all over the place. They estimated that in 2021 there are about $2 billion of investment into longevity therapy development, and that was just before the Bezos announcement of 3 more billion. So now it should go over $5 billion of investment this year. Uh, so in terms of advocacy, in terms of extent of involvement, there's no comparison. 20 years ago, you couldn't even whisper to your friends about intervention to aging and and trying to extend life. They would look fun at you. But now it's almost a completely mainstream topic. Very serious people are involved, farmer involved. As I told you, we are advocating it at the government level in Knesset. It's a part of governmental programs. So there's a huge programs in terms of realization. We would hope for more. As I said, in the COVID era, we would hope that everybody would realize the importance of aging. It's so obvious that aging is the main risk, that everybody should shift all their focus into aging. That didn't happen, but still there is much more focus than even 10 years ago, or no comparison to 20 years ago. So in terms of advocacy, in terms of work being done, um, uh, a huge improvement. I think there are now about 300,000 researchers who published on aging in the past 10 years. If you look at some indexes of research. I would bet that 20 years ago you wouldn't find 3,000. So huge progress, and also another point is that's actually spreading all over the globe. This research is spreading all over the globe. Initially, 20 years ago, it was mainly focused in the United States, very little in UK and Europe. Now everybody's interested. China, East Asia, Japan. Everybody. It's going to the developing world, to Africa, to Latin America. The whole world is becoming more and more interested, and it's understandable. The age-related risks are growing, and at the same time, technologies are developing. We are expected to have more and more involvement. Now, that's the advocacy part, let's call it. About the research part, I would say that our capabilities in terms of actual intervention and to aging are very much improved compared to 20 years ago. I'm very sorry to say it, but that's at least my perception. We have more and more technical capabilities, more and more small breakthroughs, you know, here and there. But still, we are not any quantum leap ahead compared to what we were 20 years ago. But I hope there will be actually quantum leap, actually from this collection of small improvements of this incremental progress. In dialectics, you have the law that quantity becomes quality. So I believe that with more and more incremental progress, with more and more bits of the puzzle being gathered, we actually will be able to have some kind of quantum leap and really quality leap in terms of our ability to intervene. But so far, I don't see it. I don't see that we are much better than 20 years ago. Actually, as I mentioned, our life expectancy is declining. In practical terms, for all our research and billions invested and all the scientists working, we have a decline in life expectancy. For over 100 years, we are very proud of our increasing life expectancy all over the world. We said, that's a clear proof that our medical technology is improving. Now we see that a virus comes and all our medical technology is not able to maintain our life expectancy. It's actually declining. Now it will be rising again, but once again, not necessarily because of medical technology. Just the pandemic is subsiding. So we can be more clear-headed, more I wouldn't say skeptical, but more rational about it. We shouldn't expect huge breakthroughs in the next 5 to 10 years. Perhaps earlier we were expecting that in 15 years we will live forever. No, I don't see this happening in the next 15 years. But I do see that it is feasible. All the scientific evidence points that intervention into aging is feasible and healthy life extension is feasible. So if it is feasible, if there's no law of nature that prevents it, that we should do it. Now, in terms of our practical capabilities, we still have a lot to learn and also get smarter to be able to intervene. But it's a work in progress. So to directly answer the question, huge improvement in public awareness, in involvement. Not so great improvement in actual capabilities, but hopefully the one will lead to another, and from more involvement will also increase the capabilities, from the quantity becoming quality.
Yeah, thank you. So we have Salil here on stage. Would you like to speak, Salil?
Yes, thank you very much, still, Ilya. I've got a question for you about Ilya Mechnikov. You mentioned in your works, in your book, several number of pages for Ilya Mechnikov, and I couldn't open the whole book because I can read only 20. So my question is, what exactly are you? What kind of parts of his work are you considering? Do you mean the etudes on optimism or something else? And uh, I would say, considering that it's a very paradox situation that some people we have a very well the life expectancy extending, but at the same time we have very uh, I would say, surprised very often that people are dying in a very early age, and Jeff Bezos is one of them. It's not normal that the man in his age died. And how would you say what is the balance of this situation, and what would you predict how the life expectancy will beat the cancer problem? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So the two part question. First of all, who is Mechnikov and why is he important? And second, what will happen to us in terms of life expectancy? If I get it. So about Mechnikov, I think he's a huge influence. I do believe that Mechnikov proposed probably the first truly scientific theory of aging based on observation, on scientific observation. Of course, people were interested in aging for thousands of years, from the Chinese and the Egyptians, and even suggested some interventions and some theories of aging, like the balance of elements that you're supposed to have to to live longer. Uh, but at least Mechnikov provided a truly scientific theory, and based on the theory, he propose some scientific interventions into aging. I don't think I have much time to go into details of his theory and practice. I could just say, very briefly, that among the things that he pioneered were, first of all, the idea of immunosenescence, all the things we talked about during COVID. Aging of the immune system, the effects of the immune system on aging, on risk of various diseases, not just infectious, but also non-infectious. That all started with Mechnikov. Mechnikov, as you know, he won his Nobel Prize in 1908 for the discovery of phagocytosis, the foundation of the cell theory of immunity. Before Mechnikov, we didn't even know that cells played any role in immunity. Can you imagine? Just 140 years ago, we didn't know that cells played any role. Now we can try to program cells for a specific immune response. So that's once again a source of optimism that shows it's considerable. But in terms of Meshnikov's contribution, that was a pretty big contribution to explain that cells play a role in immunity and later also in aging. So all the part about immunology of aging that comes back to Meshnikov, and also in terms of practical intervention. Uh, you may remember his famous recommendation of yogurt, probiotic diet, also the idea of microbiome, of the influence of intestinal microflora on our health and aging, also goes back to Mechnikov. Um, uh, he didn't call it the microbiome. We call it microbiome, but that's the same idea that our intestinal flora has a huge influence on our aging processes, on our health, and also not just theoretically but also practically. He was the first to suggest probiotic regimens. Of course, he didn't invent yogurt, but he did provide the scientific rationale for its use. So it's also a huge contribution of Mechnikov. And some other things that we may remember less. For example, he was one of the founder of systemic immunotherapy, the so-called cytotoxic serums. The things where we are coming back just now, the immunostimulation, the trying to produce some hormetic effects of the immune system. Also, he was one of the pioneers, and also he was a general part of the contemporary discourse on rejuvenation. One of the most prevalent interventions back then was intervention into the sex hormone system. For example, people took various kinds of hormonal supplements, sex hormonal supplements, various extracts from seminal tissue, from seminal liquid, or of sex glands, and there were more radical interventions like transplantation of sex glands or pieces of sex glands, like by Serge Voronov, operations on sex glands by Steinach, by Eugen Steinach. Meshnikov wasn't directly involved in this, but he was one of the critical minds. Was very important part in this discourse. So Meshnikov was a huge contribution, and you got me talking on Meshnikov. I can talk another hour. Also, his contribution was not just in terms of science, but also in terms of ideology. Meshnikov was one of the great ideologists of the life extensionist movement, to explain the rationale. Why do we need this? Why do we need to extend life? Why do we need to use science in this pursuit? Uh, um, uh, uh, he was also one of the first to call aging a medical condition, even more directly a disease. If you read Mechnikov, The Ethics of Optimism, he called aging a disease that we should cure. Also, one of the pioneering contributions. And he also was actually the founder of the entire field of gerontology. Not many people remember, but all those gerontologists, the people who study and practice gerontology, the very term goes back to Meshnikov, to his book Ethics on the Nature of Man, Ethics of Optimism, the beginning of the 20th century. So the gerontology actually started with the idea of curing aging. Not many people realize it, but that was the beginning of the field of gerontology. So yes, Mechnikov was a huge contribution. You can read all about Mechnikov in my book online, History of Life Extensionism. Also some articles in Advances in Gerontology. You can read a good summary about his work. So definitely one of the founders of our movement that we should learn more about. Also, hopefully, in courses of medical history and science history. And the second part of your question, Suleil, where do we go in terms of life expectancy, in terms of forecasts? You know, I hate to make forecasts. You know, some people say that in 2045 we'll have such and such endpoints, such as such and such achievements that we can check against the initial prediction. I don't believe in this. I believe that a lot of it, or all of it, is in our hands. If we really forget about aging research and to go around other businesses, then there will be no progress in 1,000 years. If we suddenly, I don't know, suddenly cancel the entire field, there will be no progress. But if we do invest in aging research, if more people learn about it, then the project can, the progress can be much accelerated, and we actually get to therapies much quicker. And we see even in the recent crisis that it's really in our hands. We really thought, I remember a lot of people thought that, you know, our life expectancy will continue to increase forever, that there is no limit to it. You know, if it was back then it was 76 years, in 10 years it will be 86 years, so it will be the escape velocity. Every year we'll gain another year of life expectancy, and we see that in the last 2 years, every year we lose almost 1 year of life expectancy. So we are going in the opposite direction. So it's really in our hands. It's in the hands of our medical science, of our medical practice. It can be going both ways, both the way of improvement and the way of degeneration. So I hope we move it to the direction of improvement.
Just a quick question, if I may. In terms of the measurements that you're wanting to take, I think this kind of leans into the direction of Apple Watch, that eventually I think a lot of people will be doing some sort of continuous monitoring. Do you have a collective or an organization or someone, or perhaps yourself, you're the one perhaps organizing companies or technologies that could aid in some of the measurements that you're looking at? So for example, my company measures proteins through a combination of various sensors, and then we can make certain predictions about how much or what kind of viruses are in a sample. So in terms of tracking things, proteins seem to be a big thing. Most of the things on the list of things that you want to track are some sort of structure of that sort. So just curious, would want to participate if that's something that you're looking into. Thanks.
Thanks. Definitely. Yes, that's the heart of the problem. Actually, everything changes with aging. You're not going to believe it, but everything changes with aging. Not just proteins, but everything. So everything can, in principle, be a biomarker of aging, and can indicate the effectiveness on treatment. So that's actually a huge theoretical problem. What exactly do we need to measure? I'm not involved in any particular biomarker, in any particular biomarker development project, but I do try to stimulate this discussion, maybe to get to a consensus. For example, we organized a special issue in Frontiers in Genetics, the genetics of aging, that was dedicated to this topic of clinical evaluation criteria for aging and age-related multimorbidity. So we wanted to stimulate discussion, to invite the contributions from various scientists with particular methods. So far, we're very far from consensus, very far even from a common language. And pretty much every scientist has his own measurement system. Or his favorite biomarkers. Of
Yeah,
course,
but I
there are
think
also.
I don't think it's a scientific innovation problem. I think it's more of a business model innovation. It's of the sort of problem that Tesla solved with self-driving. I think they're en route to solving that problem because they've outsourced the data collection and they've given that to people who are, in a sense, training the systems themselves. And so there's some sort of collaboration possible with even perhaps citizen scientists themselves who would be, these sort of mavericks or early adopters to some sort of kit or technologies that would represent some of the parameters that you want to follow. Because I think, for example, if an Apple Watch were to track, let's say, one sort of biomarker, in addition to all of that it's tracking, you can then correlate that with other, for example, medical measurements that the person would choose to elect to share. Because in the world of Elon Musk versus Bill Gates, it's often funny to remember that, the joke, and this is a joke, that Bill Gates wanted to make vaccines for the world, and people thought he was trying to put micro machines into people, or nanochips or whatever. And Elon Musk says, I literally want to put a microchip inside you, and people say, shut up and take my money. So I think there's some sort of marketing opportunity here to have a discussion that really addresses some of the core issues, but they tend to trespass in the realm of privacy, or what we mean when we say privacy of health data. So it's like a policy/implementation question.
Right. So I think the first thing we need to do is to actually raise this discussion. Many people are not even aware there's a problem, and that's what we need to do. That we need to develop science-based, evidence-based evaluation criteria for aging and for the efficacy and safety of anti-aging interventions. That's the basic thing that people need to understand. And from here we can progress. As I mentioned, I do believe in the transformation and transmutation even from quantity to quality. Your firm, great. 1,000 other firms, even better. All kinds of people developing all kinds of approaches, markers, the metrics. Somehow they all synergize toward a greater consensus, toward a better understanding what is exactly that aging is. Right now, we don't even have an agreed definition and agreed understanding what aging is. And here, besides companies, we also need a lot of theoretical understanding what actually aging is. We have 300 theories of aging, and at least 3 or 5 popular classifications of aging process that conflict with each other. We need to think about integration of this process. It's not an easy problem that a marketing department can solve. But at least we need to get people on board. We need to get people involved in this question, and start thinking. And from our discussion, from our communication, hopefully some solutions will emerge.
Well, I meant like in terms of companies, let's say, that wants to operate in Europe versus America versus China. In terms of the privacy, like such a universal system may not be possible, and so it may trespass on some sort of regulation in one country versus another. So that kind of uniformity is going to be difficult to achieve, and I'm not sure how to do that other than kind of some elective compliance system. So this is like a serious question in terms of you have some sort of technology, and there's a lot of potential there, but to overcome some of the more, regulatory issues requires some sort of different kind of innovation. But
Sure. No. There's a great dialectic here. On the one hand, we do want some common language. We do want some understanding. Like in physics, you don't come into physics with different theories about how matter moves and so forth. And I hope we will get some scientific understanding also of aging. That will actually be understood that as plausible. But on the other hand, there's danger really of overregulation, of forcing some standards. I think we shouldn't embrace it. We should always open the door for more innovation, for improvement of the system. It should be an open system. So this kind of balance that we should embrace, that kind of thin line that we can walk. But the first thing is even to pose this problem. We are so far from the solution. As I mentioned, every person has his own approach, or her own approach, and there is no way that we can agree at this point. But we have to start thinking, and if the society as a whole becomes thinking about this problem, then we'll get somewhere.
well, if you not to sound too bold, but if you had some time for a private call, I would like to propose something that I and a few other folks in laboratories have been working on, and it kind of addresses some of the things. So there might be some collaborative opportunity that kind of presents itself. But thank you.
Sure. I'm always accessible. By the way, everybody is welcome to contact. I'm accessible through email. All my details are online. Write to me, and then we see what we can do.
Alrighty, thank you.
Other questions? Other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Eli, I got another question. During when you were answering my question, you mentioned that there are those well sex hormones which are playing particular part. What do you mean? It's in the Meshnikovs, and which works do you mean? Where to read it? Because I would like to understand a little bit more about that. So, what more you can say about that? But I'm not talking about the, I would say, this medicine approach to do some kind of uh, artificial things. I mean, did you take a look how naturally our hormones, oxytocin and other hormones, are uh, connecting to the longevity? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, no, I mentioned that Mechnikov wasn't directly involved in hormone research, but he was a part of the discourse on this area. This was the mainstay of rejuvenation research at this time. People think that rejuvenation research is something very new. No, actually, in the 1920s, very respectable scientists directly spoke about rejuvenation. So that was really something mainstream that you could discuss, publish scientific papers. And the mainstay of research was hormonal interventions, mainly through sex gland extracts, but also through operations, through surgical operations like Steinach operations, who actually did ligated the seminal canals, and the theory was that that would increase the production of sex hormones, and people will be rejuvenated. Voronov, he transplanted pieces of sex glands, even from apes, mainly from apes. That was also a very popular idea at the time. And the basic supplements, they didn't have synthetic hormones back then that were invented only in the late 30s, early 40s, but in the 20s, people just, not just in the 20s, even before, since the late 19th century, since Brown Séquard, people just used extracts of sex glands. Mechnikov wasn't involved in a lot of this. He discussed it. He analyzed it. He said, there is something in it, but we need more research. I would recommend. So he was actually pretty skeptical about those kinds of intervention. But his contribution was still large. All the issue of microbiome and immunotherapy and aging theory, that was his main contribution. But it wasn't exhausted by Meshnikov alone. There were hundreds of rejuvenators at the time in the 1920s, actually exactly 100 years ago. If you imagine, exactly 100 years ago, there was quite a burgeoning field of rejuvenation research, and some of the things they were discussing, we are discussing even now. For example, a researcher by name Alexis Carrel. Not some people don't like him even because of his political views, but he was quite a pioneering figure in rejuvenation research, and he did experiments in parabiosis, in the transfusion of young blood to old animals, and there was even a question whether the rejuvenation effect of young blood or young plasma was due to a dilution of old waste products, or perhaps the young blood brought some rejuvenating substances. And with some reasoning, he favored the idea that actually it was the dilution of old waste products. So now we're coming back to this idea exactly 100 years later with the research of Irina Conboy, the same idea that actually parabiosis leads to dilution of some old waste products. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't underestimate our forefathers. There was a lot of very interesting research that we're actually building on right now. But still, this research wasn't especially successful. There was some rejuvenation effect observed, people did better. The mental capacity was improved, sexual, physical, but that was short lasting. One of the biggest problems in rejuvenation research is that the effects are short lasting. So because of that, also there was reduced interest in this kind of interventions, and then people went into the more natural approaches. So what you mentioned in your question, they thought about exercise and mental attitude, all the things they believed could improve the hormonal system holistically. If you read my book, you will see this shift very clearly, even in France, from rejuvenative interventions, reductionist interventions to more holistic approaches. So all this existed in the history of rejuvenation research, and all those approaches can coexist even. We just need to learn them and try to develop them, and especially read my book to learn the history of those approaches.
Thank you very much, Ilya.
Yeah, so Ilya, for the sake of trying to reset the room, um, for those who were not present when we started the event a while ago, can you please tell us again the summary of the book that you have in a shorter version?
Yes, we are talking about my second book. My first book is the whole world. It's called The History of Life Extensionism in the 20th Century, but actually that's more than the 20th century. It represents its history from the Egyptians for thousands of years. So that's my big book, The Whole World. The second book is just half of the world, but also pretty comprehensive. It includes sections on longevity history, history of this research, but also longevity philosophy, especially religious attitudes, attitudes to longevity in different religious traditions. Also a section on longevity science, various scientific approaches, more reductionist, more holistic, and also a section on longevity policy or longevity advocacy. So even if we are doing science and if we want this research to succeed, we still need to advocate to improve policy to enable us to actually do the research and to disseminate it. So also policy and advocacy are important, and I have a section of my book about that. So that's the basic summary. But the basic structure of this whole discussion is feasibility. Is it possible to intervene into aging and extend longevity? Desirability. Do we want it if it is possible? And action. What should we do if it is possible and desirable? How can we get it? So that's the basic structure.
Yeah, thank you. So, you said that people can access a copy of your book online. How can they
Yes,
access it? And is
yes,
it
both.
for free?
Yes, both books can be accessed online for free from my website, longevityhistory.com. If you want to bring me some income, you can buy on Amazon hard copies. I think it and went down to a couple of dollars from a few dollars. I set the price very low from the beginning to make it as accessible as possible. So you're welcome to go to my site and download it for free or order a hard copy on Amazon. And yeah, I'm happy that a lot of downloads are made. I think this site is visited at least with 50,000 unique visitors every year. Beside the books, you can also download some of my articles and see my bio. That's actually a site about my work, longevityhistory.com.
Yeah, so can you also tell us about what you're doing in International Longevity Alliance?
Yes, I can. Mainly we focus on advocacy. The International Longevity Alliance is an umbrella organization that now includes 34 non-profit associations from 27 countries. All those associations promote longevity research, development, education. Some of them more active, some of them less active. But ILA, International Longevity Alliance, is an umbrella that gathers them, that encourages them Some of the organizations were actually formed with the encouragement of International Longevity Alliance. In some places, we always look for more members, but not just any non-profit, just a non-profit with a clear pro-longevity agenda, NPOs that want to advance longevity research and education. So yes, we've been pretty active. For 10 years, we've been organizing a campaign called the Longevity Day or Longevity Month campaign in October, pretty soon. In our peak years, we had uh, events in over 40 countries that we organized in the framework of the Longevity Day campaign. Of course, now it's mostly online, but still we keep as much of this activity as possible. On October 1, we have another event online. So that was one of our, more massive activities, but we're also active in terms of advocacy. Actually, ILA was pretty instrumental in introducing this recognition of aging as a medical condition that I mentioned earlier. Actually, we have advocated for it for at least 10 years. In 2012, I personally sent a petition to all the members of Knesset, of Israeli Parliament, to recognize aging as a medical condition. And other ILA members did their part in their venues, also in the negotiations with WHO. So altogether, not saying that I did the most or others, a lot of advocacy, not just ILA, also many other people and organizations that all bred to the fact that aging is now recognized as a medical condition. Also, one of our strong advocacy campaigns was in 2017 when WHO didn't include aging as part of its work program. Can you imagine? The WHO didn't believe that aging was important for global health, so they just didn't include one word about aging. And we raised the public outcry in 2017. Not just ILA, but also other organizations like International Society on Aging and Disease was one of the leading ones in this campaign. And actually, after hundreds of organizations and hundreds of advocates and scientists wrote to them, they included the topic of aging into the WHO World Program. So that was also one of the achievements that we're proud of. But it never ends, as they included it, you see that even now with the time of COVID, aging wasn't strongly recognized as an underlying cause. So we still have a lot of work to do, but at least we are doing our best and always happy for more support, for more advocacy. Not necessarily in relation to our organization, welcome to start organization around the world, but with the same agenda to increase research development and education and aging and health longevity.
Yeah, thanks, Ilya. There is a question here on the room chat. I would just like to read this. This is from Joyce Waterhouse. I wonder how much focus there has been on the relationship between elevated heart rate and all-cause mortality.
Oh, the whole the issue about all-cause mortality. Don't get me started. That's such an underappreciated topic. For example, now in the time of COVID, we still don't know the influence of vaccines on all-cause mortality. We know pretty well the influence on mortality from COVID specifically, but we don't exactly know the effects on all-cause mortality, and we don't know the effects on all-cause mortality also from other treatments that we have. So that's a big question for future research. Generally, the general understanding, as far as so I know that increased blood pressure is associated with high mortality. But once again, you cannot. First of all, I'm not a medical doctor. Please, for any advice, go to a treating physician. What I know, what I understand, that we still need to look at matters individually. For what's the heart rate for some people, what's the heart pressure for some people, for all the people actually higher heart rate and higher heart pressure may be protective mechanism in some ways. It will help their blood flow. So it's needed for the functioning. So I'm not the geriatrician. Generally, the whole issue of all-cause mortality needs more research. That's what I know. But more specifically, I wouldn't dare to advise.
Okay, I could add something just a little bit. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Yeah, you might be interested in the work of Dr. Arthur Koka. He was a prominent immunologist of the 1930s and 40s, and he found a relationship between elevated heart rate and different food sensitivities. And he documented many, many cases where he identified specific foods that raised their heart rate. And so he documented also that what he learned about adjusting their diet based on that lowered their resting heart rate dramatically in many, many cases. So anyway, it's a potential thing that has not been looked at very much. And it's something that I'm very focused on because it's not proven, of course, that just because he was able to lower the resting heart rate in that way, that would then translate into, lower mortality. But it seems like it should be looked into. Anyway, thanks. I'm done.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, not just with this intervention. Pretty much with every intervention we have, we should look at all-cause mortality, and I think we can discover very many interesting and surprising and sometimes scary things. But yeah, it's a topic of much future research that we should look into. I'm not, as I mentioned, I'm not focusing on any specific intervention, on any specific treatments. I try to advocate for the longevity and the niche for the longevity ecosystem as a whole. For example, in our advocacy, we're able to bring some calls for research proposals on aging. So with some basic guidelines, we have to intervene into research the intervention into aging, prevention of multimorbidity. So with such general guidelines, we had a lot of approaches. A lot of people submitted proposals, so I am for encouraging a plurality of opinions, letting all the flowers bloom, not getting stuck on any particular interventions. But I hope that all the researchers in this area get encouraged and bring fruit.
Thank you for your thoughts and your presentation. I'm done.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joyce. Yeah, I would just like to tell the audience that if we may delay in trying to bring you up the stage, I think there's a glitch in Clubhouse because I did not see you raising your hand this earlier, Joyce. So, yeah, apologies for that. But anyway, I will now continuously check the hand raising feature here so that we can bring people up. So I would just like to ask Ilya also for the sake of those who are new to this topic, longevity, what are the leading interventions that we have as of now? Can you tell us about it?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm not the particular advocate of any particular interventions. You can look even in my presentation at the different classification systems of aging process. They usually like the number 7. For example, in Sense, they have 7 major process, and also in the geroscience interest groups, the pillars of aging and hallmarks of aging. You can have 9 main process that they indicated, but now that they come and say no, it's not 9, it's 10. Actually, it can be 19 or 99 because everything changes with aging, so we can classify it in all kinds of ways. But if you just look at those most popular intervention, those popular classification system, you will see alongside every process you have some interventions. So if it's epigenetic, it's epigenetic drugs, methylating agents, demethylating agents, senolytics, and DNA repair the means, and the things just to go process by process. I'm not advocating for any specific intervention. Just to encourage more interest in this topic as a whole. Um, so that's basically this idea. If people just learn those classification system and know them, they will see that various approaches are emerging and may promise some potential for intervention.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to raise your hand. We will bring you up the stage. So, Ilya, since you are here, you said that you will have a celebration on October 1. Can you please tell us a little more about it?
Yes, that's a campaign we have been having for 10 years, since 2013 that we started. We encourage people to organize events about longevity research, educational events, study groups, presentations, discussions. Why a specific month? It's a common educational practice, advocacy practice to dedicate some time to a certain worldview. It's good for community building. It's good for gathering momentum. So we've been organizing this since 2013 in October, especially in October. Why October 1? Because October 1 is the official UN Day of Older Persons. So we kind of latched on this day, and we said that this day will also have a longevity day. So we don't have to justify too much, but it could be any other day. It could be Mechnikov's birthday, May 15, or any other day. But we latched on October 1. Also, I think it's healthy aging month in some countries. I think in United States, September is the healthy aging month, but in some countries it's October. So we kind of latched on this, and we just ask people to organize more events on this month, during this month than during others, just to show solidarity, to show cohesion, to increase impact. This year also, we invite everybody to have discussions in their own circles, in their own organizations. But at ILA, we also organize some event that will be probably on Zoom, some presentations focusing on longevity activism from some of the core activists of the Longevity Alliance. But there could be other topics. We encourage everybody to do their own event, their own topic, their own theme. Uh, it all usually takes some work to encourage. You have to go to people and ask them, would you organize something? And sometimes we don't have so much energy and time for that. But at least the invitation is open. This campaign has existed for 10 years, so everybody is welcome to organize. The announcement about the ILA event is online in ILA group, and also if you go to my social media, you also see it. So everybody is welcome. We'll see. Maybe we'll even have some initial session in some virtual room, and then we go to Zoom. We will see. That will be announced additionally. But generally, yeah, we have an event on October 1, the International Day of Older Persons, or the Longevity Day, at 20 Central European Time. I think it's 5 p.m. GMT. And 11 a.m. in California. So everybody is welcome to register. There is a free registration, and then come in and listen about the longevity advocacy that we have.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, if I think there are no more questions here. Yeah, we will prepare to wrap up soon. So I would just like to announce the upcoming rooms that we will be having here in Quantum Photonics. So this evening we will have a room about NVIDIA GTC 22 highlights with our very own Jayam Sharma. So we will be jamming with Jayam on the highlights of the GTC 2022. So please check out this coming room that we have. And on the night after that, we will have a room about Bell's theorem with Hansen Chen. So please follow Quantum Photonics and check out the coming rooms that we have. Join us. So yeah, Ilya. So we are now preparing to wrap up, and I would just like to thank you so much for being our guest here. We hope that we can invite you back in the near future. And yeah, I will put in my Twitter account also the link for your book so that people can avail of it for free online. And yeah, do you have a parting shot to our audience as we try to close the room?
Yes, first of all, thank you, Cecile, for inviting me, and I'm happy to have this discussion. I do believe that we need more of such discussions, more interest in longevity science on whatever level, on whatever extent possible. I believe that from more interest, the actual longevity science will grow and bring fruit and bring therapies sooner. So thanks for your interest, and thanks for spreading the word even further.
Yeah, thank you, Ilya. Yes, I said earlier we had several longevity researchers invited here in Quantum Photonics, and this is one of the main topics that we also continue to discuss in this club. So, yeah, you're very much welcome to come back and be a resource person. Maybe in the near future, we will be organizing a panel to discuss about the present issues or the developments as well, and look at it from different perspectives. So yeah, with that, we thank everyone for joining us in this episode, and now I would like to give the mic to Darcel to help us close the room.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecile, and thank you, Doctor, for a great room. It's very interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to you coming back and enlightening us more. So, with that said, we're going to start our countdown from lucky number 5 to close the room. Is everybody ready?
Ready?
5,
5,
4,
4,
3,
3,
2 seconds.
2,
Good doctor, you are number 1. Call out our last number.
Bye bye.
1.
We'll take it.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
So yeah, thank you everyone, and see you in the next rooms. Thank you, Ilya.
Bye bye. See you.
Bye.